Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today for another God video. Slightly early on the draw for this one, but hey, it's virtually October. Therefore, let's go for deity with connections to the dead. No, it is not a psychopomp who brings spirits to rest, or a commander of the undead. Instead, we deal with someone whose domain is the loss of life itself. The tragic, the romantic. It is Naderi, deity of drowning, romantic tragedies, and suicide. Well, obvious trigger warnings for this one, folks, but let's dive in regardless. Starting as always, where can you find information on Naderi yourself? As with all entries, the Two Gods and Magic books will cover both editions and give you what you need. She has no back matter to her name, so Inner Sea Faiths is the place we first received a full write-up for her. She appears briefly in Champions of Balance, and her realm is whispered of in planar adventures. And as for side tangents, well, those can be found in Book of the Dead, Aquatic Adventures, as well as a few scattered references for one of them. Naderi was once a servitor to Shaylin, a creature devoted to love. One day she came to the aid of two lovers who the world tried time and time again to keep apart. With nowhere seeming left to turn, she gave a speech to them about eternal love beyond death. She meant to comfort those who would soon be torn apart. Instead, they lashed themselves together and chose a waterfall over separation. The servitor was devastated, but fate played another cruel trick. The act she indirectly caused was enough to grant her godhood. Now with sorrow forever in her heart, unwanted divinity she feels she stole from her mistress, and more followers lining up for death. What is it the girl can do? Naderi appears much the same now as before her accidental ascension. She is a dark-haired woman dressed all in white, with large, beautiful eyes. However, the ascension has touched her, to where now her long dress is waterlogged. Her eyes are haunted by those who died in her name. She also always clutches a dagger in one hand, similar to the holy weapon her mistress herself once had long ago. Naderi's domain is one less of choice and more prison which she cannot escape. The moment the first pair of lovers jumped at her words, all trace of her nature not connected to her domain was burned away. She, as a follower of Shaylin, had a deep connection to beauty, but most of it holds no more meaning for her. The only thing which piques her interest are love and tragedy. Her emotions melted away, leaving the only happiness she is able to feel, the bittersweetness which often accompanies mixed solutions. It was never her choice, but she will never again be someone not drowning in sorrow. Naderi is a deity of last resorts, who people usually only worship when they believe their love is doomed. It is commonly accepted for those who were left behind to offer her prayers, whether left behind through suicide or through drowning. After all, she is the deity of both. Who else would people turn to? But of course, the heart of Naderi's faith is not public-facing. After all, suicide is not a pleasant topic, and those who believe in love even unto death often criticize as extolling shallow virtues instead of actually looking for solutions. Most worshippers meet in secret, performing plays of tragic love and hiding and aiding secret lovers or those married in secret. Which brings us to our first side tangent, the part of the show where we look at and celebrate contradictions. It is that month again, almost. So let's take this chance to look at some undead. Most undead, due to being animated by void energy, are evil aligned. Or were evil aligned, remastered, and stuff like that. Anyway, so let's look at a short list of non-evil undead to fit with Naderi's struggles. Iruxi collect the bones of their departed for several uses, including making their homes out of the bones. This is done so that the bones can be called back in times of need, as creatures known as ostrichers. When a group of soldiers fall failing to protect the location, they can rise again as last guard and continue to guard the land they once failed. When wrestlers die without finishing their lingering business, they can be reborn as grappling spirits. While they are undead, their only desire is to wrestle, and do not do anything outside of pursuing the sports they loved. And finally, some ruling families are inflicted with curses which causes them to wither and die, only to rise again. These pale sovereigns tend to rule their realms well, but their presence causes their very domain to wither and begins to fill with undead animals, and eventually citizens. Many of the clergy of the Lost Maiden are survivors of suicide themselves. Since Naderi herself does not know her own nature, her faith is varied. The most socially acceptable expression of faith is in remembrance of those who have drowned, and to offer support to those whose love cannot be expressed. They also offer merciful deaths, some because their lover is passing and they can't go on without them. Others, they sneak into kunai temples to grant mercy to the tortured. However, as her faith grows darker, some priests whose own experiences have darkened their worldview believe love can only end tragically for mortals, and encourage them to end their lives at the heights of their love and at the heights of beauty. And even more, choose a balance between the two, taking both the merciful and the tempting face. And no one knows what the future will eventually bring to the faith as well, Naderi's fate itself hanging in a thread as it is. Shrines of Lost Maiden are found near bodies of water, especially where it would be easy for someone to drown themselves, like cliffs and bridges. Also known to turn the grave sites of famous lovers' suicides into shrines, much to the family's objections. The few temples tend to be found where lovers meet in secret, whether it be sheltered groves, picturesque hilltops, and abandoned buildings. Whichever, these places are marked with a symbol of a white rose at its greatest of blooms. Which brings us to our second side tangent. Talks of drowning gives us another chance to look at one of Galarian's seas. However, as much as I would like to talk about the steaming sea at the west coast of the inner sea region, it is pretty tame, the greatest natural disasters being easy to see rocks. The Volashmai Sea between Tian Sha and Sarasan, however, is another trial. Giant whirlpools found across the region, some even clustered together and reaching as far as the eye can see. Fog banks so thick they can stop a ship's movements. Currents which change on a whim and will put down anyone who so much as touches the water. And that is not even getting into the monsters. Legends telling of everything from 50-foot mermaids to ships sailed by actual gods. And let's not forget, a kaiju known as Shabloon, which actually might be responsible to many of the whirlpools mentioned earlier. Not even most sea creatures make home below the waves, so it is no surprise the sea is the most uncharted and most deadly sea on the planet. But from the seer on the planet to the seer of the multiverse, Naderi's realm is a palace of eternal. Almost mixed it up. Palace of Love Eternal, not Eternal Love, which is built in location of the Maelstrom, where she originally fled after her ascension. The palace is filled with gardens and groves, ponds and streams, all beautiful places for the many young couples of the realm to spend some alone time with each other. However, there is constantly a sense of restlessness in the place, and the residents continue to drift from one picturesque scene to another, as if looking for something to satisfy them. Now it's time to round out our video with miscellaneous facts. Naderi Center worships are, first and foremost, as a Taldan deity in Taldor, with her faith also spreading into nearby Qadira. Elsewhere, her faith is found in lands which are bleak and which ending one's own life is oftentimes feels like a mercy, those being Galt, Ustalov, and Nidal. Holidays, there are few and far between. While some celebrate the days of certain tragic deaths, the only universal holiday is Winterbloom, the approximate day Naderi ascended. The day is celebrated by reading one of Naderi's holy texts, the Lair of Arden and Lysenna. This is an epic poem that tells the tale of the two lovers whose death triggered Naderi's ascension. It is common for teenagers with a romantic streak to paraphrase the writing in their own love letters. Another work considered holy by the faith is the 7 Pangs of Longing, a cycle of 7 plays which tell the tales of tragic, unfulfilled loves. Of course, so many stories of love exist in the Pathfinder setting. Let's quickly look at a few of them with Side Tangent 3. We already spoke of the Lair of Arden and Lysenna and the 7 Pangs of Longing. Another famous story in a recent chess opera, Among the Living, which tells the tale of an Ufin warrior who falls in love with an undead queen of the jungle. Hamel and Brekka is another play, this one telling of the love between a Shanti warrior and a Chelish conqueror. And if you're looking for something slightly sillier, look no further than the sea shanty of the lobster's wife, about a goblin who fell in love with a lobster. When it comes to Naderi's relationships, they are all well known. She feels she betrayed Shaylin and runs from her, always, but Shaylin forever looks for Naderi to prove that she was never mad. But as Naderi runs, she runs closer and closer to Ugathoa and Xiphus, who want to manipulate her into their tainted arms as a new ally. As for her divine servitors, she has a pair. For good, she has Stillheart, a unique Avoil who takes on a swan-like appearance. They take on a duty to sit beside and listen to the grief of those who have lost loved ones to suicide. For evil, Phaether is a hydrodamon who takes the form of a young man. He seduces heartbroken women, then leads them to the idea that they can get back at their former lovers by drowning themselves. And finally, Naderi's herald is Arden and Lysenna themselves, the lovers whose suicide brought her to divinity. Now ending off with our final side tangent, one final non-evil undead, Revenants. Revenants, in simplest terms, are creatures who have returned from the dead to haunt the living. Traditionally, the term was interchangeable with ghosts and was used to list a variety of undead across different folklore, like the Norse Draugr. Some parts of their tales inspire the legends of vampires and zombies. However, as time went on, they became an undead separate from others whose duty was to hunt down and kill those who killed them. It could rise in a decrepit state and stalk the lands looking for their targets, their eyes noting to shine fiercely when the enemy is within sight. They are not a pleasant undead, but considering their likeliest targets are murderers, hard to call them in any way evil. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Considering the crossroads Naderi is at, I believe the upcoming War of Immortals is going to have an interesting effect on the Lost Maiden, whether she makes an appearance or not. After all, though the clues most strongly point to Serenray being the one on the chopping block, Shaylin also seems to have some big changes in the future. But either way, next week we'll be officially getting into the holiday spirit. See you all then.